Hello there, everyone. I am your German snob. And I will have to admit, I'm somewhat of an easily distracted person. Because even though I was playing through the source mod G-String at this point, there is something else that came to my mind that I kind of wanted to play before I continue the aforementioned source mod. What we have right here is a game called The Path. It doesn't really have a title screen, though. I think if you go into the options, no, it still doesn't show the name. Well, never mind that. This is the kind of game that I guess has kind of been come to be called a walking simulator. That means it's the kind of artsy, allegorical kind of video game that is mostly about walking through an environment and doing not really much of anything else, really. Now, I don't really want to spoil anything, but what I am going to say at this point is that it's sort of an allegorical reimagining of the fairy tale of Little Red Riding Hood. And I think that's about all what I want to say at this point. Now, we have a number of protagonists, and we will go through all of them, but I'm going to start with the youngest, which is right here, Robin. Who is arguably the closest to the classical imagining of Little Red Riding Hood. You know, a little girl with a red hood. So here we have it, Tale of Tales presents. That's also a loading time, in case you didn't pick up on that. Gotta have those. Here we go. Tale of Tales presents. Does it say the title or doesn't it? Yes, it does. The Path. Get used to that music because you're going to hear a lot of it. Made by Ria Harvey and Michael Samin. May not be pronouncing these names correctly. And in case I don't, well, I apologize. Also, I would almost argue that the music is just a tad too loud, though it has kind of slowed down, so yeah, I think it's fine. Go to grandmother's house and stay on the path. Now, there is a specific reason for why fairy tales are a popular subject to adapt and are a popular subject to use as a jumping off point for something more allegorical. And the music is indeed a slight bit too loud, so yeah, that's better. To be used as a jumping off point for something more allegorical. It's because most everyone is familiar with them. And which is arguably even more important, most everyone is familiar with their underlying themes, if you want. In the case of Little Red Riding Hood, it's of course, don't stray off the beaten path and remember your duties. And indeed we could do that, but the point of this game is in fact to go off the beaten path. After all, what is the worst that could happen? We will remember where the path was. It's just right there. I don't think it's possible for us to lose it. By any means. I think we should be fairly safe going into the woods. As we are about to do. And you see the path? It's still right there. I don't think anything's going to happen to it. I'm sure these woods are perfectly safe. There is nothing dangerous that we could run into, even though we might have lost sight of the path at this point. But we know it's in that direction. Right into that direction. If we wanted to go back to it, we simply could. It wouldn't be a problem. We can't get lost in here, right? I'm sure if we run just a tiny bit further ahead, we will see the path again. And we could just go straight ahead to your grandmother's house. Right? Even though it might not be visible right now. Though it might seem like it has disappeared. Oh wait. It looks like it did disappear. Oh well. Looks like we are not gonna get out of that forest anytime soon. So... what can we find in here? I see a cloud howling to the moon. Like a wolf. And wasn't there something about wolves in the story of Little Red Riding Hood? I do think there was. Okay, so what is this game about? As I said, it's part of the genre that is very often called a walking simulator. Meaning, well, you know, it's the kind of game that, among other things, games like The Stanley Parable or Dear Esther or The Journey or Gone Home are part of. It's all about walking around and looking for things in its most basic way. And that's what this game is about. We wander through these dark woods looking for items that our protagonist is going to connect to. And maybe we are going to find something more profound than that, to say the least. Now, this is what usually is called an art game, though I personally have my problems with that term, because I don't really know if art game can really be called a genre of video games. I mean, it is something that would seem obvious to do. You call artistic films art house films, right? But the way that we categorize movies in genres and video games in genres is of course somewhat different, because we categorize film by the emotion that is meant to invoke, while we categorize video games by the style of playing. And hey, looks like we found someone. A girl in white. Maybe we can talk to her. Or maybe she's going to run away. Either way, it would look like through her we found what looks like an old gramophone. This is your basket. All memories collected in the forest are stored in your basket. And that is fine. Now, as I said, that's an old gramophone. Doesn't look like there is much more that we can do with it. So maybe we proceed to look at this well right there. Maybe there's something interesting about it. Or maybe that's for someone else to discover. That's what that was just meant to imply. So looks like whatever we are meant to find in this dark forest might be somewhere else. That is very obviously the suggestion here. What we will find is that girl in white right there and some of these collectible flowers which you have maybe already seen. I don't think there is a point to collecting these flowers. I think they just serve as sort of a motivator to look for... well, to proceed deeper into the forest. They're meant to spell out a sort of... well, trail of breadcrumbs that doesn't necessarily lead anywhere in particular, but well, you can follow them if you want, and maybe you will stumble upon something. Like, for example, whatever that is, a syringe. And right into our basket it goes. Now, what would a little girl do with a syringe? Yum, candy. It didn't look like that to me, but maybe it did to her. Who knows? There's an old broken down fence here. We don't know what happened to it. We really don't. And there's another flower. And somewhat further ahead is what looks like a playground. I think all kids love playgrounds, right? So maybe Robin will too? It would seem obvious. Maybe we can play with the girl in white. After all, it's very lonely here in the woods. I see, Esso. Slide the hide. Go round the merry. And swing along. That sounds like fun. Wanna join me? Maybe here on the swing. No, looks like we are on our own. Tickles in my belly. Cuddles in the wind. Just playing on a playground. One of the joys that get lost in adulthood, I suppose. So, maybe we want to take a slide. Yeah, that looks like fun. What's that? Can we climb up there? Let's try. No, apparently that too is for someone else to do. As you see, I find some of the camera angles in this game to be quite beautiful, and there's an old discarded teddy bear with two heads. No. A teddy bear. A big and soft and warm teddy bear. And the girl in white was giving us a hug. Well, looks like she is not so shy anymore. Not running away from us anymore. I find that quite lovely. But what else is there to do on this playground? There's a bench. That sounds rather boring. A seesaw. And this is my trail. How nice of the game to remind me. We sometimes see that to know how far we've gone, but I don't think that's that important. So, how about that seesaw? No. And the white-dressed girl is leaving us. All on her own. But that doesn't matter. After all, we have a whole playground for us. Maybe we want to sit down. Playing here has got to be exhausting. Wild games are the best. Running and jumping. And best of all, riding. But I don't think that there is anything to ride on this playground. Not as far as I can see. So maybe we have to leave it behind. After all, we can't just waste our life away playing games. All on our own. So maybe we have to continue onward. To more serious activities. Leave that kind of childish play behind. And look what else we can find in this deep dark forest. Right now there doesn't really seem to be much. Just the kind of stuff you would expect in a forest. Trees, plants. And we see our path again. In case we don't know where we've already been, I think that might be quite useful. But right now I do think I have a pretty good sense of direction of what I wanted to explore. So let's go deeper into these woods. Ever deeper. If there is one thing I want to tell you about this game is that I rather like the sound design. It sounds very ominous and it creates a lovely atmosphere. One might argue it's somewhat repetitive, but I think it fits the mood, doesn't it? I certainly think it does. Now, as you have seen, this game was a project by I think only 2 people who make up the Tale of Tales studio. I think this is their most noteworthy game, though I haven't really played any of their other stuff. But this is the most well-known one. Though I would hesitate to call it famous by any means, it's still something of an obscure game. And I do think it's quite easy to see where it doesn't really have much in the way of mass appeal. But personally I find it enjoyable. It's a game to get lost in, to get immersed in if you want, to soak in the atmosphere and enjoy the mood. Now there seems to be something on the horizon, and I think we want to approach it. Now what is that? It looks like, from here, almost like a graveyard. Now that makes for a change of scenery, from a playground to a graveyard. And there seems to be a creature looking rather like some sort of werewolf, maybe from some kind of 50 years horror movie. What is he doing on a graveyard? Whose graves are these? Well, we don't know. But I think we might want to spend some time here. People die. It's hard to imagine for a kid like me. They die, and we put them in the ground, like flowers. That is what we do. An old ritual in our culture. It's what we do with our dead. Now, what is there to look at in this graveyard? Well, graves, one would suppose. So I don't see a reason why not. I don't think that wolf-like creature will bother us in any way. Now let's look at these graves. Maybe leave a prayer for the dead, for our departed. Dear Lord, make heaven be a fun place. Amen. And maybe that's all a kid could hope for. That heaven is a fun place. Maybe that's what Robin understands as heaven. Fun. Something perfectly innocent. Definitely something worth holding on to. Now how about that angel statue? Digging in the dirt. Getting dirty. Nails. Scratching. In the grave. Dirty, dirty dirt. That's what it is. Now, is there anything else on a graveyard? It would look like there is something up there. But we don't know for sure. Let's have a look at it. A dead bird. And a tree. Young dead bird. Not me. Robin is still alive, though it must be difficult for a kid to comprehend the concept of death, or of death rather. It must seem very alien to her, very, very far away. Oh well. But I think at some point we all get confronted with that. So maybe we can finally take a ride. Maybe that wolf will help us. He seems to be friendly enough. Accommodating. I don't think anything bad could happen. Look. It looks like Robin is having fun. It doesn't look like she's aware of any sort of danger. Just playing as kids do. As the bell tolls and the wolf howls at the moon, or maybe at the sun. But I think we have to leave him behind here. As now, we seem to be back on the path. And you know what else? It would look like we are. What do you say to that? Right in front of grandmother's house. Though Robin, she doesn't look too well. She moves rather slowly, as if something terrible had happened to her. What that could have been, we don't know. Maybe our wolf turned out to be not so friendly after all. We don't really know what happened there. But isn't there still one thing that we can take comfort in? That we can enter the house of our grandmother. A place where we are still safe. In the arms of a dear member of our family. And isn't that something comforting at the end of a rainy day? Even if it is implied that something very bad had happened to us. Yes, I'm sure that in grandmother's house we will be treated to all the warmth and the comfort that Granny can offer. And I think that will wash away the pain of whatever happened to us. Just like the rain washes over the ground. Very soon we will be there. Soon we will be home. And everything is going to be better. Right? Just a few more seconds. Here we are. Slowly approaching the house. Very slowly, in fact. But I think sometimes it's important to take things slow. Though I'm hesitant to say that this is a situation where that is necessarily the case. Because I would argue that there is a certain point where where slow turns into too slow. But it's alright. I'm sure the makers of the game knew what they were doing. And now we are about to enter the house anyway. Let's see. Maybe grandmother has prepared a warm dinner for us. Or something like that. A cup of tea. Or hot chocolate. That's something that kids like, right? Well. Now we are inside the house. Greeted to another loading screen first, of course. But that's gonna go away. Wait. This doesn't look very comforting at all. It looks like the site of another terrible happenstance. Everything is destroyed. Scratch marks are on the doors. It doesn't exactly seem inviting. If anything, it looks like the house of a witch or something. Though of course that's a different fairy tale entirely. Nonetheless, it is quite clear that something terrible happened here. But we don't know what it is. Would Robin even be able to understand it? After all, she is only a little girl. What would that be here? A baby's bed? Though it looks like a cage. Balloons? Maybe there was a birthday. Though who would be born into this kind of house? We don't know. We just can move on slowly down these stairs. And wait for whatever lays ahead. If it's going to be something that we want to see, well, we don't know yet. But even if it isn't, sometimes we can only confront the realities of life, even if they might seem scary to us. And look what lays beyond the door. Even if it's sometimes it's only death. As it was in this situation. And that concludes the story of Robin. And I think there was a lot that we took in. We traveled over 1 kilometer. That's a lot. We have found a number of things. The old cemetery. Also the playground, but the game doesn't mention. But as I said, it concludes the story of one of our protagonists. But even if it did, there are still, 6 left? 5? Yeah, 5 actually. And we are going to see their stories in the next episode. And until then, I am just your German snob, and this is The Path. And I hope you'll join me next time to find out what lies in store for all these other young girls. Until then, have a good time, enjoy yourself, and ciao.